Hi, everyone, and welcome to another episode of What One Thing, a Smart Meetings podcast where we ask successful people what made all the difference in their life and career so you can learn from their journeys and spark your own growth. Today's guest has helped shape the future of event marketing, proving that strategy and fun don't have to compete. And if you've ever wondered what real community looks like in our industry, you're going to love this conversation. Everyone, please help me welcome into the studio Liz Lathan, CMP and co-founder of Club Ichi. She has more than 2 decades of experience leading global event marketing teams for brands like Dell and IBM. Liz has become a trailblazer in experiential marketing and community engagement. She built strong strategic spaces designed to connect people in meaningful ways. Welcome to the show, Liz Lathan. We are so delighted to have you.
Gosh, I'm so thrilled to be here. Thank you so much.
Well, I know we have a bunch of Club Ichi super fans listening, the Club Ichiers, and shout out to all the Club Ichi fam. We're so happy to have you. So we know that you've been, global brands and all of this, but we're kind of moving into this amazing, niche, joyous space. But what's the origin story here, Liz? Like, when did you get the call for our big, beautiful industry?
You know what? It's really funny. I wouldn't say I got the call, but I had been around them unwittingly since I was a kid. My mom used to she sold like gift things. They were tchotchkes to gift stores. And so she would go work the booth at the Atlanta Gift Mart and they would sell these things for the company that she worked for. And the lady that owned the company had a daughter close to my age. And so both of us would get in there and we would, help set up the booth. And they'd even let us take orders at these gift shop ladies that would, we'd be the ones writing the stuff down and our moms would check our math and make sure we put in the orders. So I had seen it, not knowing that's an event. And then my dad was in the copper industry and went to a lot of, machine and mining trade shows and would come back with a tote bag full of squishy balls and crap. And I loved it, man. I mean, he'd just dump it out in front of me and I'd go through it all and I'd be like, you do the coolest stuff. And he traveled the world to go to these conferences and for all the stuff. And I was just like, he was gone 300 days a year. But of course I romanticized that as he travels the world. And so, I kind of was influenced by my parents talking to a lot of people all the time and being active and doing these things. And so, of course, what I thought I wanted to do, because my dad had the best life, was go be a metallurgist. He was in the metals industry. Of course, that's what I'm going to do. And so I started down that path. And then I hit calculus and calculus hit me back. And I was like, I always really liked journalism. I was always a good writer.
We'll segue a little left turn.
But the cool thing was, it's honestly very similar brain functions from engineering to journalism, because what you're doing is figuring things out, taking things apart and putting them back together in a more simple way for people to use or understand. And so that was the path I went down, journalism. And then when I found out that this public relations thing was a part of a journalism path, and hey, there's events in PR. So I started interning. I co-opted at the Army Corps of Engineers when I was in college in the public affairs department and got to do their local public events. And I ran their magazine, so I got to do the journalism stuff, but then I would show up and set up the pop-up booth and, hand out brochures and stuff at local festivals. And so I kind of started getting interested in it, but events wasn't a career. It's not a thing you could get a degree in. That's like not a thing. My big foray into events was actually,
like fast forward in 2020s and like everyone wants to get a degree in what we do.
Exactly. So my very first actual way I got into it was my first job out of college. I was in media relations for a high-tech company. They pulled in everybody, it was a small company, they pulled in everybody into their user conference. And so I was like 22 years old and I'm the one who's helping the girl who ran registration. So it was my job to just be her whatever girl.
Yeah.
At the Christmas party that year, she fell down the stairs. A wine glass went right through her hand. She was out for emergency surgery. So our manager looked at me and she was like, well, you know what Christine was doing. Why don't you take over? And I was like, okay. And so then I was in charge of registration for this 1,500 person user conference. And my job was to get in front of the sales team every Monday morning and like rally them to sell more tickets to customers and then manage all of the attendee questions that were coming in and make sure the reg site wasn't glitchy. And then on the day of the conference, be the person in charge of everybody behind the reg desk. And I remember this day, I'm standing there, my team is ready. Luckily, these were the days that we had pre-printed name badges. So, we have our stuff there and we're ready. The first bus gets dropped off. I see them down the end of the convention center. They're all walking toward us. We all have butterflies and the power goes out.
Okay. Just a regular day. Just a regular Tuesday, right? Just
everybody
totally
looks at me. Again, I'm 22 years old and they all like swivel their heads and they look right at me. It's like that record scratch. And I was like, pen and paper, everybody, we're checking these people in. So we write down the names as we're handing out badges and like all the things. And it was magical and I was hooked.
I love, like, this is such a fantastic story because, you know, there's two ways to tell this from a certain perspective of, oh my God, I was 22 and I had to do everything. I had to take on all the team badges. I had to write everything down. And I had to prep like everyone every morning. And like, there's someone who will tell that story just like in absolute terror the whole time. And then there's Liz telling a story of like, this is the most exciting thing ever. And I got to be in front of the sales team and I got to print name badges and I'm excited watching them get off the bus. And, you know, when I asked you about the calling, that is how, like, the person who tells that story with that excitement, that fire, that light, that like, I have the tools, we're going to MacGyver the answer, like, let's just keep going. You know, that's like, you know, thinking about all of us in our industry is like the ones who tell that story with excitement are the ones, you know, like really want to be here and get immersed. I also love your story about dad swag. My dad was a doctor. He used to go to annual conferences for obstetrics and gynecology, and he would come home with the conference tote bag as everyone got the bag. And it was filled with pens and paper and bouncy balls. And
straight
back
up
in the day,
man.
Yeah, he would bring home all the little soaps and shampoos and we would like split them up and like...
Oh, I have. Oh, all the soaps and shampoos.
I don't think they bought shampoo for us girls forever because they're like, no, like the JW Marriott and the Hyatt and the Hilton and like just, you know...
We
like,
had a whole basket full of it.
Yeah.
It was awesome. And it's, you know, it's what took over the guest room. So all of them stayed in the guest room. And then
yeah, for your guests because we offer hospitality. It's so interesting, these like similar stories of like you get introduced because it sounds exciting and it looks exciting. And, you know, I love that excitement, clearly your energetic presence, your excitement for our industry, your zest for connection carries over. So when you were in your previous iteration designing events for Dell and IBM, you know, where was that shift? Like, when was there a moment where you saw it shift from these sort of like logistics to where meaningful connection can live?
It happened in a spreadsheet, to be perfectly honest, because I left that high-tech company and went into the association world for about 5 years. And so I was running annual conference for a trade association. And that's when I got my CMP and did all the things you're supposed to do as an event professional to kind of go through the steps to grow your career. And then I ended up working at a trade association for a total crazy lady that was the executive director. And I was like, this is not working out. So she was ready to fire me the day I was ready to quit. And it all worked out perfectly because I had a friend at Dell. She had a connection at the executive briefing center, and a lady had just gone out on medical leave for the briefing center, and they needed someone to come in for like a 6-month contract to just do the briefing center. If you don't know what an executive briefing center is, it's kind of like an event center on site at a corporate campus, and you're basically doing events every single day. So you're setting up the agenda and the room and ordering the catering and sometimes managing transportation and sometimes a hotel room block, and they happen every day. And so we at the briefing center would joke like, the event team, what do they have, an event per month? We do it every day around here. It was hilarious. That was like this. So after 6 months, the girl that had gone out on leave decided to not come back, and they extended me for another 6 months. And so I stayed on. So the thing that I was most interested in, again, this engineering mind coming back in, I started pulling reports from the tool and just looking. And it was our job as the briefing center managers to work with the account team and figure out who the speakers were going to be. The account team would say, I need these people coming in to hear about this topic, this topic, this topic, this topic. We would go source them across Dell, the subject matter experts and the executives, and get them scheduled in. So I start pulling these reports, and I had heard Michael Dell with his big speech on like what our priorities were for the year. And it was like these 6 priorities. And I started looking at all of the presentations that we were tracking in our tool that everyone had been giving. And I went to my boss and I'm like, none of these presentations align with the priorities Michael just said we were supposed to be doing. Does that matter to anyone? And she was like, that actually should matter to somebody. And so this is where I started understanding that events connect to business. So that was my first thing about the business piece of it. And then at the time, like Salesforce didn't exist back then. And so there was really no direct tracking of pipeline and revenue. It was happening in places, but nothing that we could necessarily see. So we had started tracking those things very manually, asking the sales team, what's the opportunity and so we had our own homegrown system that did these things. And so my wheels were turning from the how the business stuff worked. So I went to my boss because our briefing center team reported into the bigger event team. And so I asked my boss if the event team needed help with their reporting too. And so she got me on there. And so I was the operations person doing all of the quarterly reports. And so I really had a strong understanding of how everybody's events influence the business. And so when I got hired on full time, they moved me to the event team and I did, reporting for everything. And then I slowly started getting pulled into actually helping with events. And all the events that we were doing were super high-end executive events.
Absolutely.
And you can see instantaneously that they're relationship building events. We managed the seating charts. We managed this executive is going to sit next to this customer and this prospect so that this conversation is going to lead this one to sign up and this one to expand their account. So again, all tied to business, but heavily tied to the relationship portion of it. So I would say my first foray into those corporate events truly was in a kind of community building role. Not that I was a community manager, but that I was helping ensure the environment was right for this kind of business connection. And that's what I've really carried through to everything.
You can really tell in the work that you do that the community piece, but with that engineering mindset, it's we're building something. What piece plus this piece? How can you put them together? How do you prototype that and shift it and change it and find that fluidity? And, I love that you took an engineering mindset, something that you loved and were already there, and took that same thought process to engineer success in your work and to take that thoughtfulness, that data analytics and say, hey, wait, where is this starting to align and asking great questions?
I think it's straight up curiosity. That's it. I'm just driven by curiosity. I'm never afraid of asking the stupid question, and I just frame it with, hey, stupid question. And then people are ready for it.
And when you think stupid question, it's almost playing it down because, women are naturally curious and we want context. And we ask a lot of questions and sort of framing it as asking for information, not as a challenge. When you frame it that way, people tend to be more receptive. But how interesting that curiosity led corporate teams to say, oh, wait, we've been doing it this way, but we want to do it. We want this to be success. And no one thought to marry them together.
Yeah, exactly.
Fascinating that you could bring that.
Problem solving. I came up with the stupidest solutions to the stupidest things that no one really thought were a problem except me. In the briefing center, our cubes, our desks were on the other side of this wall from the briefing center, and each of the rooms had a camera in it. So when the sales guy needed help, he'd wave at the camera. And I found this remote controlled light switch that was intended to turn on a lamp. And so I literally put a light. It looks like a wall switch, but it's a little box. It's just a light switch. And I put it in my room that I was managing, and I had a lamp on my desk. And so if the sales guy needed something, he could just flip the switch and it would turn my light on. So he didn't have to wave at the camera and have all the customers see that he needed help.
Yeah, like Mayday, Mayday, instead of real subtle, just gonna flick a switch.
Yeah.
But great for human behavior too. It's you need to solve something without your sales guy having to make it incredibly obvious that he's not in full control of whatever the situation is or needs help and create that awkwardness. And, building into that and willing to think about, you've built everything around these ideas of problem solving and curiosity and community and where the human connection and how that through line can actually be one of the most successful pieces. But in that, you've also rooted it in a lot of fun. You're smiling this whole time. It's joking. It's these problem solvings bring joy. So how did you find the fun in what we do? How did you find the fun in community building? And what does it feel like when you're designing something with that community engagement and joy in mind?
It's a personality flaw that I generally find the fun in everything. I had one of my absolute favorite managers of all time gave me a performance review one time, and she said that, the one negative piece of feedback she needs to give me is that I smile too much and it makes me look incompetent. And I was like,
well, that stuck with you.
and from her perspective, after years of reflection, from her perspective, she had for a very long time been the only woman in a man's world in the environment that she was in. And me coming in being, I wouldn't say I'm flirty, but friendly and casual, and even in executive meetings, just being human and kind of taking that approach of everyone puts their pants on one leg at a time kind of thing. And I never felt like I needed to bow down to the executives or do anything. And she saw that as something that would hold me back because I needed to convey respect to receive respect. And I was coming in as almost like a super casual executive assistant kind of person and just being a little lower level than what she thought I could be. She had even told me when I was running Dell World, she's like, I don't want you standing at the reg desk helping your team, no matter how long the line is. You need to look like the director that you are, walking around and talking to people. No clipboards. You need to be talking to the executives so that we position you appropriately. And I'm like, all due respect, if there's a long line at registration, I'm helping my team and they can deal with me not looking like a director. We're going to solve this problem. And then from the smiling thing, I tried real hard. I spent 2 weeks not smiling. And I was like, I'm going to be super professional and I'm going to listen to her because she's very well spoken and she's very well respected. And I did not smile and I was all business. And then my team 2 weeks later had an intervention with me. They pulled me into the conference room and they're like, Liz,
we want our Liz back.
What's wrong? Is there a layoff coming? Is there like, are you afraid to tell us something? And I was like, oh guys, I'm so sorry. So then I just went back to normal.
Yeah. There's so much wrapped into that story. I like so many layers to that, perception being one of them. And your perception was like, I like people to perceive me for who I am authentically. And in some worlds, who we are authentically is then thought to be counterintuitive to the people we want to be, because you said it was a different world. And before, to get to C-suites, to get to executive level, women had to sort of amend their personalities towards this perception of what executive is. And, you said, and it's a man's world and this is how they act. And so this is how we need to act instead of interjecting our natural selves into that, this label of you're too friendly.
But she's not wrong. And perception is reality. And it was a huge learning lesson for me to recognize when to turn that off, when to not joke at the beginning of an executive meeting to ease the tension, when to actually take on that persona. It very much helped me navigate through all of my future corporate political gatherings that I had to manage, and I needed that helmet adjustment early on to recognize that if I was going to move up, like nice girls don't get the corner office. At times you have to.
At times you do.
Be somebody else,
But also that you still said, beg to differ. I want to bring another perspective. Like, what if I shift your perspective to see me as, but my team responds to my leadership when I'm authentic.
Exactly.
The executives do respond to having a real human being in the room who's not being performative, who's being natural and brings joy and brings that sense of engagement and community. And I think that really flows through into that idea of you're always looking at how do we connect humans to humans and where is that through line and how do you build that? So let's bring that into the Club Ichi family. So, you've built this fantastic community who is so connected and engaged and supportive of one another. So how did you go from being authentically yourself and leading your team and solving problems and curiosity to birthing this beautiful community who really is devoted to one another?
Yeah, I mean, it really came from me being at a lot of the industry events because I was really active in one of the industry associations, like on the board, president of the board and all these things. And I loved their annual event. But the event was kind of all there was. I was paying for membership to be a part of this, but it was just an annual event, which I don't want to say just because it was a great annual event, but there was nothing in between. And the annual event was extremely formulaic. It was the very same 6 hours in the keynote room where the sponsor had brought in a whole bunch of speakers. And then most of the breakout sessions were sponsored sessions. And then they did some really great networking stuff, which was always fun, which I very much appreciated and loved that. I felt like I'm in a room with 300 incredible people and they're not creating an opportunity for me to talk to them at any point. Like, okay, we're making boats out of pool noodles at 4:00 in the afternoon and racing them across the pool as team building. So that was fun. And yet we spent, 6 hours in a room listening to someone on stage tell me how smart they are. When do I get to talk to these people? This one where I met Nicole actually was at one of these events. And we were chatting about the best part of these events is the coffee breaks. We can actually talk to people. And the coffee breaks are only 15 minutes long and you got to get your coffee and check your email and do all the things and you don't really get to talk. So what if we made an event that was all coffee break? And I had done unconferences before in my past. And so we decided to just run our own little unconference. We rented out the Children's Museum in Austin, Texas. This was back in 2017. So we rented out the Children's Museum and invited people to pay $200, help us cover the costs. And we had 87 people fly in for our first ever little unconference. We called it Hot Dokimazo. Dokimazo for the Greek word to try or prove that something is genuine, and hot because I took it to Nicole and she was like, ooh, that's hot, like Paris Hilton would say. But then she's like, no, hot, like haute couture, which is awesome because it's totally what we're not. And so putting those two together were two words nobody could pronounce and it was absolutely perfect. And so we took over this children's museum. People flew in. We hired Adrian Seeger to come in and run the unconference for us. He's like the godfather of participatory meetings, taught us how to do everything. And at the end of the event, we do this retrospective, like, what did you love? What should we change for next time? The only thing people told us to change was, hey, if you're going to do this at a children's museum again, could we get adult-sized furniture next time? And we were like, oh, that's a really good idea. Okay.
Probably.
So we did it again in San Diego. This time we had adult-sized furniture. And then we held sessions in the sandbox. And we did, weird stuff that we always do. And it became a thing. And so it was at that point that it was at IBM at the time. And I left IBM to join a friend who was starting up an experiential agency. And we pulled that event that Nicole and I had been running into the agency. And so we ran those honestly more as like lead gen for the agency than anything else over the next 4 years. They were still kind of community feeling events for sure, but there was no official community of any kind. And so, but we had t-shirts, people were hotties, like it was a whole thing. So when Nicole and I left the agency to start the Community Factory, because what we really loved were these community things, and the agency wanted to do more agency-ish things. So Nicole and I were like, we're going to stick with the more micro events. So we left. All those people that had been coming to those events started reaching out going, hey, where'd the community go? And we're like, what community? We didn't have a community. They're like, I had the t-shirt. There was a community. Where's the community? And so we're like, fine. But our company was called the Community Factory. So they're like, your company's called the Community Factory. You should probably have a community. We're like, well, what would we call ourselves? The commies? That'd be weird. So we threw a little retreat, and some of our friends forced us to start a community at that point. We were trying to figure out what to name it. And I had found this Japanese word or phrase that was ichigo, ichi-e, which means one moment, one time, which is exactly what we try to create in events, right? That one unrecapturable moment of connection. And so I shared this with the team, and they were like, oh, chills. And if you know David Stevens, he was at the event, and he looks down at his phone and he's like, done, here you go. I was like, done? What do you mean done? He goes, I bought the URL, weareichi.com. I'll sell it to you for $1. And I was like, okay, we have a community now. Okay. And so
lightning speed community with the love of community.
That was December 2022. And so March of 23, we turned on a Slack channel, and we started holding little supper clubs here in Austin. And by the end of 23, we had over 600 people in the Slack channel. We had done a supper club every single month, and we realized we were spending way more time playing with our community than we were doing client programs as consultants at the Community Factory. So that's when we thought, well, I wonder if anyone would pay for this. Could we make this just a thing and make that what sustains us? So we turned on a membership fee. We got a couple of sponsors to help us grow it. And fast forward to now February of 2026, we have over 550 members. We have a whole bunch of sponsors that help us create incredible programs. And it is all we do. So we don't even take on client stuff anymore. It's all this community, and we're just having so much fun. The thing is, after growing up in corporate with pointy-toed shoes and blazers, I can finally just do things that pull people out of the zone they get locked into through brand guidelines to think outside the ballroom, to do ridiculous things, and take just a few nuggets of inspiration back to what they do every day. And that's really what it's about. It's just people solving problems. It's a beautiful blend of corporate and association folks, solopreneurs and freelancers, suppliers, everyone from DJs to photo booth people to big mega agencies. It's just this great ecosystem, and everyone comes to give first and get later. And I love it so much.
Yeah. And I love that comment when you think about building a community, because, to give first, to always give first. And, having seen some of your Slack channels and, read with each member's like, hey, does anyone know that there's a call for proposals out? And instead of I'm going to keep that information to myself, it's everyone go apply. We want to support the team. The nominations came out for Eventex or for Women to Watch or whatever the list is. And it's great, who are we supporting? And what's really interesting is that your community really seems connected to giving first, but through that has a sort of positive ripple effect into the corporates and the associations in the solopreneur world. So it's this really interesting, like I said, a ripple effect that you're creating with this give first, get later style. And through that, creating those moments.
I hadn't recognized this before either, but I just wrote about it recently when it hit me that as a kid, because my dad traveled so much, he would take me, I'm an only child, so it was relatively easy to do. Every summer, he would take me on one of his business trips, he and my mom. And my mom and I would get to go, tour the town or whatever while he was working. And one of the trips was to Japan. And it was one I didn't quite understand, because we're in Japan and we're just doing for 2-3 days maybe. We're staying with his coworkers' families. We're eating at these fancy restaurants with this weird green tea ice cream and very uncomfortable chairs and all this stuff. But it was really sightseeing. And my dad was with us through all this, which he normally wasn't. Usually he'd go work and we'd do this thing. But it was just days of him being around. And then we left. And I don't know, I thought that was a business trip. And he's like, well, in Japan, you get to know each other first before they decide if you're worthy of doing business together. You don't go in with the pitch. And so that really stuck with me. And it's the same in Latin America, right? Like you go do these fun things together long before you get in a room and pitch them. And so that's kind of the vibe. And since our name comes from a Japanese phrase, I'm like, it's embracing that idea of we're first name only, get to know each other as humans. How many cats do you have? Like what, how many kids, and we like, there's a channel in our Slack channel called Caregivers. It's for people who are taking care of aging parents or children. We've got one that's called Lads Who Lanyard. That's just dudes talking about dude stuff. Like we've got a Formula One channel. Like people are people. And I think that's how you build trust in such a better, less transactional way.
One of the things you said about trust and getting to know each other, you and I have started, in the orbits of how do we get to know each other and, had conversations. And one of the things that I've always loved about your commitment to thinking about our industry is this idea of humanity, but who's in charge of the humanity throughout the whole event? And that's just a fantastic question to stop and noodle on. Where is the humanity happening?
Like this is the problem.
It can be forgotten. And like you said, if your only humanity connections is when they get to have coffee, but that's 15 minutes. When do you get to connect? You and I have talked about I think you have a t-shirt. It says the cheese cubes, like, it's a networking event. So here's a piece of the ballroom with no windows, wine, cheese cubes, Ritz crackers, and like, good, there's go networking. And, that's, I love that I still want that t-shirt. But this idea that like, that's networking, it's like, no, how are you connecting humans? Because that networking event looks like the middle school dance. You have people on one side of the room, people on the other side of the room, and no one's meeting in the middle unless that's where the bar is. But
that's the problem with events, because we're very clearly swim laned out, right? The event team's job is to build the room. The sales team's job is to manage the customers that they've brought and to see if they can turn any new ones. The marketing team's job is to make sure that the branding looks right, the messaging is right, and the speakers are showing up for their stuff. Like everyone has a role, but no one's role is to host.
Yeah.
And that's what's missing. So the great event people take that on themselves, but the event people that are overworked and don't have time to do that and are trying to like respectfully stay in their lane, assuming it's a salesperson's job. They don't know that they can take that responsibility. And I think that that's one of the things I've always loved to do is stand at the door and welcome people in. And that's why all of our events start with me and Nicole hugging people as they come in. Like we want to be the first faces they see and the first arms around them, and making sure that they feel welcome in that very first moment.
And it's so interesting to stop and think, because I bet you a lot of our listeners are like, well, yeah, like we do that. It's like, okay, like, go back to the tape. Like who does that? I know that certain event centers we've gone to across the U.S. have greeters. Like your job is you represent this city and you stand at the door. Hey,
freaking
welcome.
Walmart has greeters. Why aren't we doing it?
The joy that you use through some of these community events that anyone can join if they want to come and meet you and see you and say, hey, can I come see that event? I know there's been thrift store fashion shows, I've heard, poolside games.
Let me tell you what we're doing at IMEX this year.
Oh, okay. We're going The Secret happening at IMEX.
Not secret, but it will. It's like no one knows it yet, but I'm about to tell you guys.
Well, we're getting the first in. So Amy and I are like, okay, let's go, because thrift store fashion show I missed out on, and that seemed pretty cool.
Yeah, well, to tell you, so what had happened was we found this place that was like a couple miles off the strip. It had 3 houses, 2 swimming pools, a hot tub, and a pickleball court, and it's all outside, beautiful back door space. And we're like, this is awesome. So we called it the Clubhouse. We rented this place out, and we did different parties each night. And so one of the nights was a thrift store fashion show. So we went and bought $1,000 worth of thrift store finds. When the party started, we had people volunteer to be fashion models, and everyone else was their glam squad, and they had to dress them up. And we had built a fashion show runway, and we put the chairs out like it was a fashion show, and then they had to like walk the catwalk, and everybody like applauded, and we were like, oh, you win. So that was one night. Another night was the epic pickle party where everything was pickle flavored, and we played pickleball and all that. So one of our participants looked up, she was like, what in the world is this place? What was this place? And she found out that at some point in its sordid past, it was a nudist camp.
Now we're all wondering, listeners and watchers are like, okay, where is it going for IMEX this year, Liz?
So our Monday night party at IMEX this year will be the party in the nude. But it's the color nude. Whatever the color nude means for you, all of our decor will be the color nude. I'll probably be wearing one of those shirts that makes it look like I'm wearing a bikini, that's just really a t-shirt. But so that's party in the nude this year.
Party in the nude. You heard it here first. Smart Meetings family. If you want to go party in the nude and whatever that means to you. And now
small print,
I bet,
please wear clothes.
Yes. It's like asterisks, but please actually wear clothes. Like I like Evie are just like, get it together because we're processing this entire Club Ichi. But, it goes back to this ethos that you said. It's like, it's a moment. And
it is.
everyone who saw pictures from the fashion show were like, man, that was a moment. The music video that I think came out of that was a moment. Like people are having moments of joy, not even being physically there. And then, of course, the ones who get to participate find respite in the community, a safe place to go at IMEX where like, I just need to put things down for a moment and find a quiet space. And now the creativity to play with something that would seem risque, but can be fun. I love that you add this all. I would be remiss in thinking about all of this joy and fun and creativity if I didn't ask you, like, what one thing has made the difference in your life and career that's brought you to these joyous, playful, outside the box human moments?
Always talking to people. I used to be so embarrassed that my mother would strike up a conversation with someone at the grocery store and find out that they were third cousins. And I would hide in my jacket every time it happened. But now I do it. And my daughter ducks under the cart when I do it too. And it's really being willing to have conversations with anyone. And while I am an extrovert, I am that introvert when I go to an event where people are already in the room, either seated or standing at high boy tables, and they're already in conversations. I cannot force myself into those. I hate it. I stand in a corner on my phone until someone notices me because I feel extremely uncomfortable about it. And so I always create environments where there's a thing happening that people can gravitate toward and can do something together and can feel like they're not interrupting a conversation that's going on. And so I create an environment like that because that's what I want. And that's how I have noticed that I best interact with people. And so the what one thing is figuring that out. Like, how do you operate and how do other people feel comfortable, and then bringing that to life? So I kind of find that it's the same thing with most entrepreneurs. You find a problem that you're having and you solve it for yourself and find out that, hey, other people have the same problem too. But you don't find that out unless you talk to people. And so I love all the things we do with sticky notes, asking what everyone's problems are. It lets everybody see that everyone has the same problems. Look, we are all the same here and we're all struggling with the same things. So just talk to more people. Get out of your head. Stop navel gazing. If you're in-house and working at a brand company and you're only doing your events, you have to look up, stick your head out, go to networking events, go meet people. There's a whole world out there. Keep doing it. And that's one of the things I've always done. I've always been involved in organizations, associations, volunteering, things outside of work. Just so this is how the network gets so big. That is my one thing.
I love that. And, I think overall, when we kind of look back on this fantastic conversation we've had, it's you keep giving us permission. Like, you have permission to be yourself in meetings, even if it's a slightly different perception. You have permission to ask questions of everyone, up and down, sideways, left or right. You have permission to ask people that you just met, hey, what's a problem that you'd like to solve? I think your community has a name for those events.
Spontaneous think tanks.
Spontaneous think tanks. We love a good Post-it. I know you and I both Post-it aficionados. But we don't get, like, dear Post-it family, we don't get paid for that. It's just, it's really good to
people,
move around.
Like, Post-it should sponsor you. And I'm like, dude, the amount of money we spend with them, they would never give it to us for free.
It's this idea of physically writing something down, putting it up on a wall, putting yourself out there, connecting through that shared movement, adding movement to your event, adding silly. It's silly and entertainment can be
Laughter
together.
Breaks the ice. It makes people like in family style meals. All of our events start with a family style meal. Break bread together. Get people moving and talking and do the fun. Our mascot is the rubber chicken because we always joke that the really bad events have rubber chicken dinners because it's the same chicken with the same cream sauce and it's just it's gonna be one of those, right? So we have reclaimed the rubber chicken and now we use the actual comedy rubber chicken to remind you that you can throw some fun in there. It could be the other rubber chicken, man. Have some fun.
Absolutely. And it's strategic. You have permission to use fun to be strategic. Like, these two things do not have to work against each other. In fact, they can work towards your goal if you pop your head up, think differently. You have permission to do things in the nude. You heard it from Liz. We have permission. We have permission.
Well, and this is why Secret Family Reunion exists too, because it's a business trip, the world's first secret business trip. So the first time we did it in 2019, 80 experiential marketers met us at JFK, brought a passport, packed for 6 days for 65-degree weather, and we told them nothing else. And they showed up on site, and we revealed that we had chartered a plane to Tuscany, and we whisked them away for this 6-day spontaneous think think tank truffle hunting, pasta making extravaganza. The impetus of it was proof that business can be done outside the ballroom. And we've tracked, just anecdotally after that, the people on that plane have done over $45 million in business with each other. And that was in 2019. And then, of course, COVID hit and we couldn't do secret trips because people needed to know where they were going, whatever. And so now, 2026, we're finally bringing it back. So May 1st through 8th, secretfamilyreunion.com. Meet us in LA. We'll tell you how to pack and you won't find out where we're going till the day we leave.
I'm fascinated by this because, again, you're showing the return on investment. You're showing the return on humanity. You're showing the return on hosting and joy and fun. And it has tangible business results. Building community and being human can actually drive the results that maybe you're not seeing because everyone's staying in their lane instead of breaking down the silos. Liz, last quick question, because I'm dying to know, what do your kids think you do for a living?
It's really good. My son actually knows what I do because he came to one of our spontaneous think tanks and helped. So he's been there. He's seen the whole thing. He actually grabbed a microphone and interviewed some people for me. And he's, helped me set up chairs and tally sticky notes and all the things. So he kind of gets it. But he also sees that when I'm not on site at an event, I spend most of my time behind a computer. And he's like, yeah, I don't want that part of your job. I like the part where you're standing up and doing things. I'm like, okay, that's fair.
Yeah.
My daughter, I don't really think she understands. She begs me to take her places, but the only places she's gone is like the vacation side of things. Like she went to the Bahamas with us. We're going on a site visit to Belize in March. So she thinks I just travel and sit on a beach, which is fine.
And
I'll
go
let her
do cool things.
That.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I used to tell people that my dad rode on airplanes and talked on phones. So yeah, this is pretty much true.
I think my little ones, she thinks I just go to places so I can collect swag to give her. Yeah. The one time I took her with me, she collected...
I saw her there.
Yes, you did. You did. She collected 35 pounds of swag. I had to carry it, so I weighed it. And yeah, that was her. But who's going to say no to a 6-year-old being, can I have one of those?
Exactly. That's funny.
Liz, thank you so much for sharing your stories and your humanity, for your permission to have joy, for sharing this warmth and commitment to building communities within our community and beyond, and showing that it's strategic and a good investment and good for the bottom line, but more, I think, just good for all of us as humans. So thank you so much for sharing that with us.
Thanks for having me. This was so fun walking down memory lane with you.
So much fun. And I bet you everyone's looking up like, what is going on with this group? And like, can I join the cool kids at the clubhouse? Because, older millennials, we love ourselves a clubhouse, right?
Please come hang with us at Club Ichi, ICHI. That is us.
Liz, thank you so much. And thank you so much to the Club Ichi community for lending you to us for a day and sharing and giving us all that permission. And I desperately want to see, and also don't want to see pictures from the new party.
Oh, it's going to be amazing. Absolutely.
It's going to be amazing. It's on my calendar now. And to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us for this special episode of What One Thing, a Smart Meetings podcast, where every story sparks inspiration for your own journey. So until next time, keep creating, keep connecting, and keep sparking change. And we'll see you here at Smart Meetings again soon.
Smart Meetings, What One Thing was produced by Bright Business Media. Visit smartmeetings.com to subscribe to your daily dose of inspiration.